When we were talking, a lot about the benefits of resistance training and strength training, and it's not typically, or at least not traditionally thought of as a form of exercise to improve cardiovascular health or heart health. How important is muscle in this, or building muscle in this whole, everything that we're talking about? Does it make a difference to have more strength and more muscle?
So they found that having more muscle improves cardiovascular mortality. It improves, like if somebody's sick, like chronically ill or, really sick in the ICU, you're more likely to make it out of the ICU if you have more muscle, more lean body mass. They found that resistance training improves bone mineral density. Like they do scans, the DEXA scans on hips. If you resistance train, it actually goes up. If you do aerobic exercise, it actually goes down. I mean, you talk about that one client of yours who her doctor was like, oh my goodness, your bone mineral density, your osteoporosis is improving, which we almost never see. We have medications for it. It helps slow it down and sometimes reverses it. They're all like, infusions usually.
Yeah, she was on, I think it was Fosamax was the name of it, yeah.
And you got to take that and sit upright and drink a ton of water.
And she felt terrible for a couple days
it's
afterwards.
Horrible.
Isn't it? It affects the immune system, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Almost,
Well, I don't know the exact mechanism, but because it's not my specialty.
Sure.
But either way, resistance training showed that bone mineral density actually goes up, whereas with aerobic, it actually goes down. And you guys know all this stuff with aerobic. So first of all, I'm a cardiologist. My patients, and like when I give these lectures, like I teach doctors how to teach their patients to lose weight. Like my number one requested talk is, hey doc, we want to fly you out to Arizona. We want your weight loss lecture. And these are CMEs. These are continuing medical education conferences where doctors want to learn about weight loss. So they call me in. So that's the main talk I give is usually about weight loss to doctors so that they can teach their patients how to lose weight. So I forgot where I was going.
Oh, about resistance training.
Oh yeah, so resistance training. So I'm giving this talk, and I'm tall. I've been doing this for like 20 years almost, telling doctors, listen, cardio is good for you. There's no doubt, cardio is good for your heart. Endurance, cardiovascular mortality goes down. There was a study published in the Journal of American College of Cardiology in 2014 that showed if you run twice a week for just 5 minutes and not even fast, just like 2.5 to maybe 3.5 miles an hour, like a light jog, or it's even just walking if you're taller. For 5 minutes, you reduce your cardiovascular mortality by 45%. If you did it every day of the week, it would be 50%. And all-cause mortality went down 29%. So it's good for you. Cardiovascularly, cardio is good for you. It's just not efficient for weight loss. It is and they have found that there's this thing called the constrained model for activity. They found that there's a cap to how many calories you can actually burn with activity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you run a mile, let's say you burn 200 calories, depending on how much you weigh. Running an additional mile, you might burn another make it 220, then another mile, 240, and then it kind of caps out. Your body starts taking energy from your knee and other places. So it's not linear. Like you can't just keep running all day and burn 18,000 calories. It just doesn't work that way. Your body just doesn't do it. It adapts and says, listen, this is insane. We're not going to burn any more calories. Mm-hmm. So there's a constrained model to activity now. We know this for sure. Tons of studies on it. I think I sent you a link to all the studies. The constrained model says that the more activity you do, there is a cap to the amount of calories you can burn. So you can only burn so many calories a day. Like I give my patient, like when I'm giving this talk, I give the doctors or a patient an example. A 200-pound person, if they ran for 3 miles, they would burn maybe 300 calories, right? If they lifted weights, squats, deadlifts, big compound movements, they lifted weights for an hour and a half, they might burn 150, 200 calories too. Or how long would it take you to run 3 miles, like a 5K? An hour? Yeah, for most of my patients, like 40 minutes to an hour. You could not eat the plain bagel with cheese. That's 320 calories. That's way more efficient. That costs 0 seconds. Mm-hmm. Like literally, I just don't put it in my mouth.
Right.
Like that's 0 seconds. Right. Whereas I run for an hour or lift weights for an hour and a half to try to even come close to the calories in the plain bagel with cheese. So I think the point of all this is like, I'm a cardiologist. I'm not telling you guys don't do cardio. Like this, my patients need to do cardio, and I try to transition them over into lifting weights once they're like, their endurance has come up. But my biggest issue is like, if you actually lifted weights, kind of like, in your book, I read the whole thing. In your book, if you outline this clearly, if you lift weights and put on just a little bit of muscle, like even just 5 pounds in a year, your metabolism goes up by a lot. Like, the studies show anywhere from like 6 to 8 calories, maybe 60 calories per pound of muscle gained. We don't know. There's not really like a really good way to measure that. So your metabolism goes up. You're burning more energy doing everyday stuff, even while you sleep. Your body needs more calories. If you were maintaining on 1,800 calories a day, and now you put on 5 pounds of muscle, now maybe you can eat 2,100 or 2,200 and still maintain your weight. They also have found that with that constrained model of exercise, people who are less active or sedentary, they actually burn more calories if they start an exercise program. Like if somebody just sits around all day, suddenly they start moving. People at lower levels of activity, you do burn calories. People who are already quite active, if they increase their activity, they're not going to burn that many more calories. That's like that whole constraint model. Like it's not linear where the more activity you do, the more calories you burn. If you don't do very much activity and you start doing more, it goes up and then it kind of like plateaus.
Well, this is why, like Adam, when he was competing, he would coach competitors. These are people going on stage trying to install. There's experts at getting shredded. He would save the cardio for the end, to get that boost, because eventually it kind of tops out and you start to adapt.
Right. Yeah. And I did that too. Like I didn't compete, but I got down like 7% body fat, something like that. But that's what I did. I did zero cardio till like the very end, add a little bit. And it's not like insane cardio because you don't want to even lose muscle. Like they found with excessive intense cardio, and you guys already know this, you talk about it every day, but excessive cardio eats up muscle. Like, you always say it pares down muscle. Absolutely true. Your muscle mass, your lean body mass goes down. And then if you still have fat on you, your body fat percentage goes up. That's not something most people want.
Now, when you're lecturing and doing this in front of all these physicians, like, is it well received? Because there's not a lot of doctors I hear like really emphasizing the need for resistance training.
Well, you can't argue with studies. Like they're all scientists like me.
Sure.
If the research doesn't prove it, they would be like, okay, dude, you're insane. But I present it like, study by study. Like, listen, here's everything we know. I have like a 2-hour lecture on YouTube on everything we know about exercise. It goes through every single study. It's boring as hell, but doctors like this stuff.
Sal
you might, yes.
Yeah.
You guys
people like us enjoy it.
Yeah.
You guys would probably like it, but I go through like every single study on exercise and what it does and what we know about it and how it works and how you can use it to benefit yourself. And then there's another one like that's 2 hours on every study we've ever done on diet. Obviously not the stupid studies that make no difference. Like there's like a billion studies on diet and exercise, but the ones that kind of shape what we know about exercise and diet today are very important. So it is well received because you can't really argue with, we made people exercise for 2 whole years and they lost 3 kilograms. 2 years of exercise and they lost 3 kilograms.
Yeah.
That's not efficient weight loss. They could have lost 3 kilograms in 2 weeks if you just cut your calories. 3 kilograms is 6, maybe 8 pounds at the most.
Right.
In 2 years. That's bad. Like my patients who weigh 300 pounds, if they lost 3 kilograms, good. But that's horrible.
Now,
like you need to weigh 100 something.
Now, what about the studies that have shown that excessive exercise actually increases risk?
So there are. You mentioned some of them. There's one study that showed your calcium score. There's a scan we did. Dr. Agaston, who's a cardiologist in Miami, he's actually the doctor that wrote the South Beach Diet book.
That's right.
Dr. Agaston's a cardiologist who invented the heart scan. It's the CT scan of your chest. It looks at your calcium score. The more calcium you have in your heart, the more likely you are to have cardiovascular disease. There's a correlation there. So people who ran at an excessive amount, like they did excessive cardio, and I think it was 7 miles an hour more than 4 times a week, something like that, really excessive. Fast pace, lots of running, lots of mileage. Like a guy training for a marathon or a gal training for a marathon, their calcium scores went up. There was also another study, Mayo Clinic Proceedings published this one, that if people like ran a little bit, their longevity increases. But once it hit a certain threshold, and I don't remember the exact number, but once it hit a certain threshold, your chance of dying went up. Your mortality goes up after a certain point. I don't remember the exact cutoff in that one, but that's why I want people to have a balanced approach. Yeah, you need some endurance, and it actually help you lift better. I mean, I'm sure you guys have noticed this.
Yep.
When a patient's or clients are just lifting weights, they do really well. Throw in like one day of cardio here and there, just get their endurance up. Suddenly they can do more reps or more weight. I mean, I've seen that all the time. So there is some of that. There is some crossover, but definitely if you're trying to build muscle and lose fat, you definitely don't want to be like running marathons. I mean, you guys see the pictures of people that win marathons.
Yeah.
They're like, they don't look anything like
It sounds
any-
like, based off what you said, a good strategy might be run a mile twice a week. Because you're saying 5 minutes. You said 5 minutes of cardio.
5 minutes, not even running. It,
Oh, it's not
it
even
was
running.
literally like 2.5 miles per hour to 3.5.
that's wow.
it's
That's like a
it's
power
That's
walk.
like you walking.
A walk if you're tall, or like a light jog.
Yeah,
for
I
people
walk.
like
I
me.
walk at a 3. I walk on the treadmill at a 3.5 to a 4.
Yeah, so you would be a walk for you, but for people
Wow.
my height, it would probably be slight. Well, 3.5 is not, but it would be basically a faster walk.
Wow, interesting. Now, what about insulin resistance? I know, and I talk about some of this in the book, and there was a study I didn't quote in the book that showed that just building muscle, regardless of body weight, improves your sensitivity to insulin. Like, how important is your body's ability to utilize insulin effectively in terms of cardiovascular health?
Yeah, it's definitely huge. The more muscle you have, the more the insulin resistance gets better. And in fact, like diabetic doctors, endocrinologists will tell their patients, if you ate a little bit more carbs than you should, and you don't want to increase your insulin, shots afterwards, just do like a minute of squats. Because just getting the blood flowing to those muscles releases factors that make it so you can handle that extra sugar load better. But yeah, definitely having more muscle is very protective against diabetes. And when it comes to testosterone, they've done studies where they've given people exogenous, injectable testosterone that didn't have bad low testosterone. I know you talk about testosterone all the time. It actually has protective cardio. We'll get into that, I suppose.
Yeah, I love that.
But definitely, when they injected testosterone into people, when their body fat would go down, their muscle mass would go up, their insulin resistance improved significantly. Testosterone, I'm sure your audience wants to hear about it.
Yeah.
But I talked about this on another podcast. But testosterone has like a U-shaped curve. We found that people with testosterone under 200, their cardiovascular mortality goes up. And some of the worst cardiovascular patients have the lowest testosterone. Like people with CHF or congestive heart failure, their testosterone levels are usually low. Really bad diabetics, testosterone levels really low. People with coronary artery disease, testosterones are really low. They've actually found that testosterone dilates your arteries, your coronary arteries. They put people on a treadmill, make them run or walk, whatever it is, for as long as they could. And they time them to see when they start getting the chest pain or the ischemia, where your blood flow, your oxygen demand and supply don't match. You start getting squeezing chest pain, and then they'd give them testosterone, put them on it for a few weeks, and bring them back and have them do it again. Their arteries are more dilated, and they actually can go farther. In one of the studies, it was only like 26 seconds more, but on this Bruce protocol on an incline, 26 seconds is huge. In another study, it was like an additional 2 minutes where they could actually go further before they got the
Just from the
squeezing.
testosterone.
Yeah.
Wow.
But they've also found that people, so at really low testosterones, the cardiovascular mortality is higher. And then as it normalizes, you're in the 400, 500, 600, maybe 800, 900 range, it's like your cardiovascular mortality is normal compared to normal populations. But then as testosterone goes up again, like, you got these bodybuilders injecting whopping doses, a gram a day, 2 grams, whatever, or per week, their cardiovascular mortality went up. But there are studies that showed there was no, if people were on therapeutic level TRT, like not these 1 gram a week type people, but like 200, maybe 300 at the most a week or every other week, whichever, there was no additional cardiovascular risk. The problem with testosterone when you get too much of it is it aromatizes into estradiol, which is a female hormone, and those have been shown to increase clotting and those kind of things that cause some of the strokes and heart attacks that we see with testosterone. But at normal levels or at therapeutic, like they have hundreds of thousands of people on testosterone. Most of my patients that are older are on it. There was no additional. They've looked at populations of hundreds of thousands. There was people on TRT and people not on it, and we're talking like normal doses. Obviously, there was no a worsening cardiovascular risk, and in some cases there was improvement. Like they were less likely to have their CHF classification got better. They had less symptoms, less hospitalizations. The ischemic conditioning, where they can actually do more before the chest pain starts, got better. So there were some trends towards improvement. Their body fat went down. Obviously, their muscle size lean body mass went up. I mean, these patients are not bodybuilders, but still, even with just small, therapeutic doses, they improved in a lot of